Welcome into the Just Fantasy show here. Just Fantasy Baseball show. I don't even know the name of the show, Elijah. It's been a long year, but we have Elijah Evans, first time guest. He's a writer. He also runs the social media at times for Just Baseball. Elijah, how's it going?
It's going well. I'm glad to be here, Clay. It's good to hop on. I've been waiting for this invite, so I'm excited to be here and talk some fantasy with you.
Elijah, how do you run the Just Baseball Twitter account? Like during the 8 p.m.,
Yeah,
9 p.m., 10 p.m.
no,
How's
there's a lot. So
what's that
some days
process?
it's pretty crazy, honestly. We have a lot of fun. Me and Ethan Badowski are the two guys for Just Baseball that run it, and we do a variety. Some days we're splitting games, so we both are doing like 6-7 games. Some days, it's just one of us. So when it's just one of us, either way, it's pretty crazy. I've got Big Inning up on one screen always, where it's rotating between games, and then usually on my other screen on my computer, I'll have 4 games split screening. The biggest 4 games or whatever, the 4 games I'm wanting to watch, whatever it might be. So usually I've got anywhere from 5 to 8 games up on the screen at all times, pretty much. So I'm watching everything going on. I'm watching the highlights, just, pumping things out, trying to get people the content they want to see.
Yeah, and sometimes I'm like, you all are busy trying to do your job, and I'm that douchebag that like texts you on a group and it would be like, Hunter Renfroe just made a sick catch.
Hey, we
You all have
appreciate
like a
it.
million
It's
things going
helpful,
on.
honestly. It is a lot, but it's helpful, honestly. We love getting people in. We'll have people in the comments sometimes that are like, post this guy, and I'm like, I'm getting there, one thing at a time, right? But it's fun. We have a lot of fun.
It
It's
is
a good
funny
time,
because
and
it's gotten to a
yeah,
point where I'll be watching a game and I'll see a defensive highlight and I'll be like, ooh, I
yeah,
wonder if they're going to catch that or not. And then I'll just wait and see.
yeah. That's what we do our best.
So today we're going to be talking about rookies all across. We're going to give some dynasty perspective. We're going to give some rest of the year perspective, points league category, whatever you're in, any form of fantasy, we will cover it with these rookies. Elijah came with 5 names. I came with 4 names. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Elijah, who do you want to start with?
We're going to start with Endy Rodriguez, the recent call-up for Pittsburgh, one of the top catching prospects in the game. We're super excited to see what happens. Aram Leighton of Just Baseball has been on Endy before anybody was, honestly. He's been a big talk at JB for a while now, and he's got a ton of upside. He's just a fun player, and he's only played 3 games so far, so we haven't seen Endy's real, like, what he's doing right now quite yet. It's not, it hasn't come through to this extent, but again, 3 games in, we're not worried about him. He looks like he's the long-term catcher in Pittsburgh. So, the offensive upside of a guy like that at the catcher position is incredibly valuable for fantasy long-term. This year, I think it's a little bit more of a risky guy. I mean, I don't think he's a guy you're expecting to be, a top 5 to 10 catcher this year. So he might be more of a bench guy, more of a, slot in here and there, stream him during a good week of some sort. But he's got a ton of potential in every way. He's got a little bit of speed. He's got a little bit of power. He's a good, well-rounded contact hitter. Just a quality bat. He walks a lot too. So that's another, if you're looking for some guy to add extra on base for your league, it's a good option there. He's going to walk a lot. He has walked a lot in AAA. So he's a quality bat, and at the catcher position, if you're thinking about a dynasty league, that's a guy you would love to have long-term around.
I think he's a good dynasty player, and I think he's a good depth option for redraft this year. I'm in a 10-person league, so I'm staying away from him right now. Only 6 home runs and 315 plate appearances in AAA. 21 years old. Is he 21 or 22?
I think he is 20. I think he just turned 23, actually.
23,
he was 22 coming into the year right now.
Younger player. He has a lot of upside, like you mentioned. This is a guy like I'm watching closely, but not adding in shallow leagues. But I'm watching him closely because I think he could be a big option next season. So I want to keep an eye,
100%.
see what I think about him, roll him into next year. Now, you mentioned he'll be the catcher long-term in Pittsburgh, and I agree. But there is a player who I want to talk about, and that's Henry Davis, his teammate, also a catcher who's kind of made the transition to outfield. This is a guy I'm picking up. I have him on my team in a 10-person because I can use him at catcher. He has that flexibility to put in the outfield if you need to for whatever reason. But from the catcher position specifically, you're getting, so far he's batting 275, 377, 385, 2 home runs, 3 stolen bases, 115 WRC plus. So you're getting some steals from a catching position, 11% walk rate, 18% strikeout rate. He's hit well throughout the minors. He was a 1-1 guy. Like, there's nothing that I don't like about him. I think the average is going to dip down. I don't think he's a 275 type hitter, but he's looked great out of the gate. He's getting a ton of playing time, and he's available in most leagues. So if you need a shakeup at catcher, like I do, Elijah, I made the mistake of dropping Sean Murphy early in the year because he wasn't getting enough playing time. He was doing that whole like split playing time thing. Which
the first few weeks.
You can't do it. Well, he's been freaking great. So I've been bouncing around catchers all year. So I'm landing on Henry Davis right now. What have you seen from him?
He's been great. Like you said, the versatility is awesome. Having a guy that you can plug in the outfield spot or you can plug into your catcher spot is good. He's got a really good approach for a young guy. I think that was always a calling card with Davis when he was coming up through the minors, when he was the top draft pick a few years back. But he walks a lot, which is good. He's got a walk rate, I think, around 11-12% right now.
Yep.
And his strikeout rate is in check pretty much. So his bat to ball skills have been better than I think some people expected off the bat. And he's got some power upside. We haven't seen a ton of it yet, but you could see him tap into more power soon. And like you said, if you need a spot start in the outfield, it works well. And if you want an offensive minded catcher he's not catching, but if he's eligible at catcher, right? So it works, and you can plug him right in there. And that's a borderline top 10 offensive catcher, I think, for fantasy purposes. And I think, he's got like with Endy, both of them are going to keep getting better. I think Davis is a guy who's already looked good and his approach has been there. So if he continues to ramp up some of those power numbers, I think you could be looking at a guy that's legitimately finishes as a top 10 second half catcher at the position.
Who's next on your list?
I want to go to Ezequiel Tovar because this guy is a really interesting case. I see your jersey in the background there. I love it.
For those of you on Spotify or whatever, I have an Ezequiel Tovar City Connect jersey. The reason why is simply because I wanted one of these awesome Rocky City Connects, and I thought, who the hell am I going to buy? I'm not getting like the 29-year-old who just happens to still be on the Rockies. I'm not touching any of their pitchers. So I said, why not go with Tovar? It's a cool jersey. I like it.
I love that because, Tovar started slow and there was a lot of like, is he not ready? And he's ready. Ezequiel Tovar is a really talented player. And not only is he an elite defender, and that's obviously doesn't matter for fantasy sake, but him being an elite defender for the Rockies is what pushed them to keep him up and to let him work through his struggles at the plate. And he's getting there. So you look at April, and in the first month of the season, he had a 580 OPS. Then May, 767. It's already a huge jump. He looked better. He looked solid. And then you look at June, he put up an 885 OPS in June with, 5 home runs in the month, generally just looked really good. He's just been a much better hitter. And then the last week or two, he struggled a little bit and fallen back. And coming out of the All-Star break, he's started to get it going again. So, he started July a little bit slow. He got in a little bit of a slump again after an amazing June. Now he looks better again. He's got 4 hits in his last 4 games. He's starting to pick it up slowly but surely. And I think, that's a guy who, for me, like if I have the opportunity to, I'm buying. I don't know if it's buying low, but I would be buying stock in Ezequiel Tovar right now. Absolutely. For this season and for going forward. For Dynasty, 100%. I tried to trade for him in Dynasty like 3 different times with the same person, and he wouldn't do it no matter what. I was offering different types of packages, and he wasn't budging on it. But I don't blame him. This is a guy who. He's going to stay in the lineup. He's really young still. All these guys we're mentioning, Tovar is probably the youngest, I think, of everybody we're mentioning. He's 21 years old. He's already a top-tier defender, and it's really just going to come down to him improving his approach. His walk rate's a little too slow. He chases too much, but that's stuff he's going to get better at, and he's already showing a lot of improvement this season.
He looks like a really young kid in the major leagues is what he looks like, which is exactly what he is. The past month, he's been batting 274, 303, 480, like you mentioned. He's been playing much better, and there's been kind of up and downs with him, but when you watch him, man, you can see the potential. And like you said, he's going to stay at short. He's going to stay in this lineup. He has a great glove. He's a long-term option here. And if somebody does have him in Dynasty and is willing to move on, I would 100% be buying, because I think he's just going to tap into more and more power, especially playing at Coors. I love that fit. In terms of redraft leagues, I think he is an option. If you've had some injuries, the way I've used him in my league is just streaming him at home, even though he's been okay on the road too, but streaming him at home when I've had to deal with some injuries. Now, there's one player coming back soon, Trevor Story, that a lot of people are really thinking about. Like maybe he's somebody on your roster and you just need to get to Trevor Story, which is kind of funny because I don't think Story's that great, but he's somebody who's going to be on fantasy
he's a name
rosters. But the next guy I want to talk about Francisco Alvarez, catcher.
Man.
How old do you think he is?
Alvarez he's young. I'm gonna go 21. I feel like he's around the same as
21
Tovar.
years old,
Yeah,
man.
that's crazy. That's
So
crazy.
just to put in perspective, this is a 21-year-old kid trying to manage a pitching staff and hit. 247, 306, 534. That's 19 home runs for him on the year. 129 WRC plus, 13.5% barrel rate. He has been a guy who's kind of bounced on and off a lot of people's rosters because he does go a week without getting a hit or a week with striking out too much. And especially like in a points league is what I'm mostly talking about because, he'll put up 0, 1, 0, -1. It just is a nothing. But man, he has looked so good at times. A ton of juice in that bat. I think I'm like all the way buying in right now, even in redraft leagues, but especially for next year. No matter what league you're in, I'm like he may be my just like target for catcher.
Yeah, I don't blame you at all. I mean, I just watched him absolutely embarrass my White Sox this past series. So he's a stud. He's really good. The pop in his bat is pretty unbelievable, and especially at a position like catcher, that's a premium bat you're getting for that position, and you don't have to worry about the defense for fantasy's sake. His defense has actually gotten better, which is impressive, but his defense generally has been more of the concern with him as he was coming up. He's improved the approach a lot. When we saw him his first few months, his first few attempts at cracks at the league, his approach was a little bit shaky. He was striking out too much. He's gotten it down to a reasonable point, I think, right now. And the power is. Next season, I wouldn't be surprised if he had 30 home runs. And at the catcher spot, like that is as good as you can get from a catcher, obviously. So I mean, other than that crazy Salvador Perez year, but generally speaking, for the position, that is a great bat. And I got a guy coming up next who's also what I consider to be a premium option for catcher soon enough. Tyler Soderstrom, your former Oakland A's. He's Soderstrom. He hasn't shown it yet, but he's good. I like Soderstrom a lot.
Another 21-year-old.
The power potential. I mean, this is crazy. We just mentioned 4 guys who are catcher eligible today, which is great to know for fantasy players because that's a position where it's hard to find a consistent performer. And these 4 guys we've talked about already, this being the 4th, that are eligible at catcher are gonna mostly. I mean, Soderstrom's he's gonna bounce around. He's gonna play some first. He's gonna DH a decent amount, but I think he'll at least continue to be eligible at catcher, play enough to be eligible there. And this is a guy who's got 20 homers in the minors this year. I mean, the power is there for sure. He's going to walk a good amount. He's going to hit for a lot of power. He's never going to be a guy who has a super high average, I don't think. I think he's a good hitter. I don't see him being, a consistent contact hitter necessarily. But the power upside and just the general quality approach is really solid for Soderstrom.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite prospects and a guy that I'm staying away from in redrafts this year. It's simply too bad of a team, too bad of an environment. And in AAA, he was 254, 303, 536. WRC plus around 87 or something like that, which in Vegas is a hitter-friendly area, but I'm not too worried about it. Like I said, 21 years old, super young. I love the bat. I absolutely love it. I think that he's still a couple years away from really being able to be like a viable fantasy option, maybe in a deeper league if you just need some home runs. But like you mentioned, I think he's going to gain eligibility at least first. He'll play DH. Like I think that there's an opportunity for him to even move to a corner in the future if they needed that. The A's have prospects coming up that also are going to be needing time in the corner. So we'll see how that goes.
I made a move for him in Dynasty about a month ago. And as much as he's probably not going to help me all that much this year, I'm in a rebuilding spot in my team. And if he's a guy you could get, and I'd have to check it out. I've made a bunch of moves recently.
This guy's wheeling and dealing so much, man.
I mean, I have been. I acquired a team this offseason that was pretty terrible.
Elijah said, when you're off my team, I just forget about you, man.
Yeah, my entire goal has been just, stockpiling young talent. And Soderstrom's a guy where if you can get him for decently affordable right now, I'm all over that power bat going forward. I think he's long-term going to be a great player. I'm going to pull up this trade for you because now I'm trying to remember exactly what the move was.
While you're doing that, I'm going to talk about Edward Julian.
Oh, yeah.
Who I love him. He's playing for the Twins. A little bit of a weird situation. He's coming up, going down. Like, where are they going to fit him in the lineup? And so far this year, 318, 394, 574, 9 home runs, and a 257 ISO, but he's striking out 31% of the time, 11% walk rate. He has a 167 WRC plus and is just like not really owned much. And that's partly because of playing time. That's partly because of some underlying metrics as well. A 233 expected batting average. He's hitting the ball on the ground too much, 50% ground ball rate. But I love the bat. I think this is the type of guy that if you want to get by in a 12, 14, 15, whatever deeper format you have, he's a good option. I could see him getting more and more and more playing time going forward for Minnesota. And like all of these, I mean, we're talking rookies, right? So all of them are options in Dynasty, right? The question with him is where is he going to play defensively? He's not been a very good defender. That he's a classic. The bat needs to get in the lineup somehow. So in terms of positional value for fantasy purposes and dynasty purposes, will he stick at second? I don't know. Is he going to be a DH? Is he going to move to first? Or where they're going to get the bat in the lineup does change the value because he's a different type of value if you're talking first base compared to second base. Yeah,
no, definitely. It's interesting to see because I know he's moved around a little bit, but the as you said, the bat's good. I mean, the stats, the underlying might be a little more concerning, but his numbers are good. He's going to have that power is going to continue to tick up. He's had a few really big games in the last few days. I think he's from I know this from covering highlights and everything, but he's gone deep the last 2 Twins games, and he's a guy, like you said, the positional situation definitely is going to matter a lot for him. It's kind of similar to how Luis Arraez was when he was with the Twins, where you don't really know exactly where he's going to slot in. But it's a bat it's pretty solid, and he's a well-developed player. He's a little bit older than some of these guys were mentioning, but I think he's just a quality piece to look out for, especially like you said in some deeper leagues.
Before we keep going, have you played Sorare yet?
I have played Sorare.
Tell us about your team. So we like to talk about Sorare. If you all haven't played, it's incredibly fun. Sorare, as you know, you get to draft your team. There are collectible cards. You get to construct your team off of a budget. So Elijah, tell us a little bit about your Sorare team and how it's been going. Give us the 30-second overview.
Yeah, so I got really lucky because I drafted at the beginning of the year when Just Baseball had just started. We had just started doing stuff with Sorare. I thought it was really fun. It was cool. I wish I knew more of what it was before I drafted my team, because I drafted my team when I didn't really get it. So I didn't really think that carefully. And I was like, oh, these guys look fun. But luckily I was like, oh, I'm going to draft some White Sox. Fortunately, I drafted Luis Robert. So that has been phenomenal. He's been kind of carrying my squad. The biggest issue for me has been pitching. I haven't been able to quite get, just consistent quality arms. I had Cease that I drafted originally, who's picked it up as of late. So I'm feeling better about him right now. But the pitching's been the issue with Sorare, and it's tricky because there's a lot of guys, pitching just fluctuates, and that's been this type of season. Unless you have, there hasn't been many guys who have been great consistently. So you just got to keep kind of working with it. But generally, my team's fun. I have Corbin Carroll and Luis Robert as my outfielders, which has been a great situation to have. I drafted Trey Turner originally, which I don't know what I'm going to do there. If I'm going to move him or something. But we'll see what happens there. I've been starting JP Sears, which might sound insane, but he's actually been kind of good for me. Yeah, no, he's been kind of nice for me in my flex pitcher spot. So it's a fun thing. So Sorare is cool, and it's cool to just keep building my staple of players and just seeing who I have. And I have so many different cards now that I have to actually think carefully about like who I'm starting every given week, which it used to be like earlier on, I was just putting who I had, and now it's like I have to make good decisions. So you really have to think about like the matchups and everything else going on. So it's a fun time. I think everybody, if you haven't played, you should check it out for people listening.
We're gonna finish up with 3 rookie pitchers here.
Yeah.
I will let you go first. You know what? Actually, how about we do this? I'm gonna list them all, and we'll rank them in terms of rest of season.
That sounds great.
We have Reese Olson of the Tigers, Gavin Williams, who is a Guardian, and Quinn Priester, who just got called up for the Pirates. Personally, oh man, it's tough. I think I would honestly go Olson, Williams, Priester for this season only. Season only. I think Gavin Williams is one of the best pitching prospects And I think he's going to be much better than any of these guys that we just listed going forward. But for this season only, that's what I would go. How would you go?
Yeah, I like your ranking. I'm flipping Olsen and Williams.
Yeah.
I agree with you that this season Olsen might be better, but I'm taking the chance on the guy who has by far the highest upside of these three, because Gavin Williams is a guy that I have in my dynasty league. Also, he's a guy that I had him. I think I traded for him this offseason in a big deal, and he's somebody that I like expect him to be a top 2 in a rotation for Cleveland. Like I expect him to be the 1 or the 2 for Cleveland soon. I really do. I mean, I think his command isn't quite there this year, and you can see that he's kind of working through trying to figure out where to spot his pitches right now. But when he gets going, I could easily see, as much as Olsen's probably been slightly better this year, I could easily see Gavin Williams just getting hot and figuring out his stuff in August, and his stuff just playing up to the maximum level, and him putting together, a 2.5 ERA over the last month and a half. So I don't know. I could see him going off.
I love Gavin Williams. 3.96 ERA, 4.71 FIP. I've had him on my team. I just had to drop him again. 10-person team. Just didn't really have room for him. But
yeah,
he was dominant in AAA, striking out 12 per 9. He's currently sitting just under 7 per 9. I love his fastball. There's just something about his fastball. When you watch it on TV, you could tell it's different. There's something going on there. It's only been 29 innings. I don't want to take too much away from it. However, the reason why I went with Olsen is more just stability and the jump that I've seen in Olsen in the beginning of the year in AAA. He couldn't find the zone. Next thing you know, he starts to figure it out. So far, 3.96 ERA, 3.53 FIP. His stuff is crazy good. Good changeup, good slider, good fastball. Batters are hitting 157 off the slider with a 42% whiff rate, 174 off the fastball. And if he can get that changeup going, he already has over a 40% whiff rate on changeup. He throws it to both righties and lefties. It's just he only uses it about 12% of the time. If he can get enough confidence of that and start using that pitch more, man,
that's awesome. Yeah,
I really like it. I like what
it's cool to see.
He plays in a ballpark that's pitcher friendly. Like, I like Reese Olsen slightly more than Gavin Williams for the rest of this year. And maybe
I don't mind that. No, I don't mind that at all. And he might be the best arm on the Tigers right now. I know you're following them carefully right now. He genuinely could be. And I want to give Quinn Priester a little bit of love, because I know we both ranked him 3. About him. Go ahead. I agree he's 3. And I don't think he's a guy you're really targeting this year, but I do like Quinn Priester long term. I think he's a good pitcher. He went to a high school about 30 minutes from me, and my school when I was a freshman, I wasn't on the team, but we played him in regionals, our varsity team, and I think he struck out 16 and shut us out, and that was how we got eliminated from our regional championship. So it was pretty cool story. I've seen him pitch since he was 17. I saw him pitch twice. Personal vendetta. Yeah, a little bit. He dominated us. It was crazy. But I remember watching him then, and I was like, this guy's gonna make the league. I was like, in my mind, I was like, this dude is legit. And he is. He's really good. He's a talented pitcher. I don't think Priester's not a guy you're expecting necessarily to be a 1 or 2 type starter. I think he's, in fantasy, I think you're hoping he's a 3-4 starter, which is good. I mean, I think he's going to develop well. It's just going to take some time, especially the way Pittsburgh's been playing lately. They're kind of trending down. They're trending towards selling. And I think they're going to end up in a situation where they're kind of just using the rest of the season to figure out what they've got in some of these young pieces. So he's going to get an opportunity. We're going to see what he can do. And I think he is somebody that we could see a lot from in the future. I'm probably not drafting him I'm not really targeting him in redraft leagues right now, but in Dynasty, I like him as a long-term option to keep stashed away and see what you can do with him.
I like him as a streamer. Add to your watch list right now. See where it's going. The first 2 innings or so looked pretty good. Kind of fell apart after that in his first start. Just a wait and see for him. Now, before we get you out of here, those of you who don't know Elijah, he's a White Sox fan. So I want to give you 1 minute, and I'm watching the clock.
Oh, man.
1 minute. Quick. We don't need all the details. Just what do you think's happening at the deadline?
Yeah, so you can read my whole article on justbaseball.com. I'll say that first of all. That just came out yesterday, my deadline piece. So go check that out. We got to sell. It's time to sell. The Sox need to do it. They need to adjust. The biggest question mark will become Dylan Cease. I have grown into the possibility of trading him. A month or 2 ago, you asked me, I would have said no. Now I think you have to consider it. The market is so thin, and there's so many teams trying to get pitching that I think you can really genuinely have a bidding war for Cease and just see who can offer you the absolute best haul of prospects. And I think there's a few teams that would put together, a package of 4 of their top 15 prospects in their system, which would be huge for the White Sox. So I think you have to consider Cease. I think Giolito's already out the door. Maybe to your Reds, we'll see. I think Lance Lynn is out the door. I think the majority of the bullpen's out the door. Maybe Tim Anderson. The issue with Tim Anderson is he hasn't played well this year, so you're trading at the lowest of his value.
He's going to be back next year.
I think they hold him. I think they have to hold him just because you have to let his value rebuild, and you can trade him next year, hopefully. It's an unfortunate situation there, but otherwise, it's not many of the offensive pieces moving. I think it's really just sending as many pitchers as you can for as much prospect capital as you can and rebuilding for the goal of 2025. I think it's a retool.
White Sox fans, Elijah also has a White Sox centric podcast about prospects. Plug that. Tell the people where they find you on Twitter. And of course, he's on justbaseball.com if you want to read
that. Yeah. Future Sox podcast. You can look it up, Future Sox, futuresox.com. We do all sorts of White Sox prospect covering the farm system every week. I do like a weekly roundup where we talk about the performances in the White Sox farm system, everything along those lines. It's a good time. And then you can find me on Twitter at Elijah EV8, number 8. And I post White Sox content, all types of baseball content, just baseball stuff. So you can find anything you want from me there. Thanks, Clay. It's a good time talking with you as always.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Everybody, please make sure to like, subscribe, follow, rate, whatever else I'm missing, and we will see you on Monday.